I joined what I thought was a church, but it ended up being a cult.
Yeah, how did you feel about that?
I am angry at myself for allowing things to happen to me. You're made to think it's your own fault because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You know, your heart's not pure enough, you're not good enough.
Why do you think it's important to tell this story now? Like, what are you hoping to achieve from this?
Every city will have a church like this. I feel like this is the start of hopefully a turning point where now things are coming out in the open. It will be less easy for churches like this to prey on people. So as a kid, my mum takes me to church along with my brothers. And my own mental health is pretty poor from around 15, 16. Being part of the youth group as part of the church is my lifeline, really. So I'm 18, I feel that God is telling me that I need to go and do a year out with the church. And I think that experience makes me really feel that I want to be a pastor, I want to go, I want to serve God with my life. And there's this other church, a friend of mine also goes there, called the Hope City Church. The first time I sort of experienced the pastor of the church. He's this sort of very charismatic guy. When he was preaching, it was a very engaging style and very, it was almost like a performance. I'd find myself wanting to listen, wanting to hear more because of the way he was delivering. And the pastor speaking to us is saying, this is the church you've got to go to. I think God is speaking to me. In hindsight, I know that it's the pastor. It's because he wants to build this church, he wants more students to join. It was clearly aimed at students and saying, this is the church for you. So I decided, right, this is where I'm going to be. I have to basically agree to all of these rules, which is you have to commit that you're going to tithe and give 10% of your income to the church.
Did you want to do it yourself, or was it simply you were being told by God?
I understand the concept of giving 10% of my income. I've been raised in the church, I understand that that's a thing. And everyone, we're all giving money, we're all giving time just to build this church.
I know that the leader was a male pastor. Did you feel a difference between male and female?
As a woman, there are certain expectations about my conduct and the way I dress. If I'm on stage, I have to wear makeup, I have to wear high heels, not showing your shoulders, or if you're on the stage and you're raising your arm, you don't want anyone to see any of your skin. I joke about, with my friends, about wearing integrity vests and integrity shorts, but it's not a joke. So there's definitely extra expectation for women to look conventionally, feminine in these ways.
Did your church have any rules when it came to dating?
If you are a leader in the church, then you don't date someone that your leader hasn't approved for you. If you want to date someone, you both wait for 6 months and pray on it, and you never are alone together. There's all this stuff around purity culture and not having any sort of sexual kind of intimacy with someone before marriage, and that's really heavily policed. Never having a door shut, never being alone together, never being alone in a house together. We can't text after 10 p.m, we can't do this, we can't do that. This is all the things we have to do to stay pure, basically. So there's this person I want to date, right? And he's not someone that my pastor thinks is a good match for me. This person that I wanted to date had been in one of the other congregations, and he had basically demonstrated he had a bad attitude because he'd questioned volunteers giving a lot of their time unpaid. He's not living out the core values of the church, basically, and they don't think he's for me. But this guy's pursuing me.
Could you tell me more about your decision making?
I went and sat with my Bible and my journal, and I prayed, and I feel like God is saying to me, don't be a people pleaser. I think they're a good person. I want to date them. And I went to my pastor with that, and my leader says, well, I don't think following what your pastor tells you to do, even if you disagree with it, is people pleasing. It's just logical that you do what your pastor tells you to do.
And what about if somebody within the church was struggling with their sexuality, or which orientation that might be? How would that go down?
It's only when someone's more and more core in the church that sort of thing starts to be really policed and really addressed. There's a guy on academy. One day we go into academy and it's all really solemn. The senior pastors are in there, and it's okay, that's a really kind of, the dean of the academy's there, and basically sits us all down and says that this person will not be coming back because they are struggling with same-sex attraction. Yeah, we're just not going to see them anymore. They're not coming back.
How did you feel about that?
I feel so conflicted because I feel that like my gut is telling me this isn't okay. Like my gut is telling me there's something really wrong here. But my brain and everything I've learned, my leader's saying it, so it must be right. Like I've got to submit to my leader. And it's like so scary, right? So I'm like working for the church. Like I live with people from the church. I'm in another city. My family relationships are not, you know, I love my family, but they're not people that are a safe place for me to say, you know, this is going on, can you help me? It's like, this is what I've got. So like anything that's rocking that and disturbing that is terrifying. I remember the moment that I decide to switch off my intellect. And I remember doing it, actively, consciously doing it because I couldn't survive otherwise. Being in the church, like all of the women who are students, academy students, have to do a shift every couple of weeks in the women's rehab. And it's a residential rehab for women called City Hearts, and it's run by the church. This charity basically is a rehab for women who are experiencing addiction or self-harm or depression or eating disorders or unplanned pregnancy. It doesn't occur to me that I'm completely untrained for this kind of work, being a project worker and supporting women who have got really complex needs.
Are there any sort of outside organisations involved in that? And like, do the women have any support workers or social workers coming in to check on them or inspect your work or your training?
They're supposed to see a counsellor, but the whole time I'm working there isn't a counsellor in place. They're not getting any professional help. My understanding was that the charity was funded through the housing benefit of the residents. So like when they elected to like live in the rehab, like they would then sign over their housing benefit to the charity, and that was what paid like for their place there. There was a time when there was like actually government funding going into the charity through like a Salvation Army contract.
Did you want to do it yourself?
A lot of the time, my gut instinct and my feeling is I'm tired, you know, I'm exhausted, I don't want to do this. I'm really, you know, I don't have anything in me. But there's no one to talk to about those feelings. As soon as you share that you don't want to do something, you've got a bad attitude. My job's really hard, you know. The residents are really unhappy. They're sad and they're hurting and they're in pain, and I don't know how to fix it. And all I've been told is if someone's struggling, you just pray with them. In hindsight, I think that's so messed up, like, that it's like, sorry, I didn't know I was gonna get emotional doing this. It's like, you know, you're so disposable that like, you're made to think it's your own fault because you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and you're not, you know, your heart's not pure enough, you're not good enough.
It sounds like they were attacking your self-worth quite a lot as well. Do you think that was affected throughout that period?
I think my sense of self is totally eroded. And also like my sense of like what I can achieve. Basically, anything that I'm able to do is God doing it in spite of me, in spite of my, you know, failings and impurity and like general awfulness as a human.
What was like the life mission of the church, so to speak?
The main thing that we're all trying to do is build the church, build the house of God. I look back at this church that we're building, like how is it actually doing good in the world? How is it helping people? And I can't see any evidence for anything good that church has done in the city.
How many people were actually involved in the church? How many members are we talking about?
In terms of the number of people, I don't know, like a couple of thousand people.
How did you try to convert people? Like, what was the power? What was the message?
We hang out outside the student union late at night. We have a big group of us all wearing matching t-shirts, and we're giving out bottles of water and sweets and flyers and telling them about the church and telling them to come. We start running a student service on a Wednesday night in Volca Revolution, and it's like a party, like come to this cool event, and it's not clear that it's like a church thing. It's just like trying to do something cool. We used to joke about it, like flirt to convert. There was a friend of mine that referred to all of us in the worship team as like the Hope City Honeys. Any tactic to get people to come to the church and stay in the church was kind of fair game. There's people in the church now that are there because of me.
So what was the key situation or the key moment where you were like, okay, I really need to leave?
I've started dating this person that my pastors didn't want me to date. Starting to think, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. Come home to my family. Eventually I start having some therapy, and it's only when I'm talking to the therapist and explaining all of my experiences and what's happened to me, and that this therapist says to me, this all sounds like a cult, like what you're describing is a cult. I'd never used that word before, but the more I sit with this word, the more I realise this is a place that's policed the way I dress, it's policed who I date, it's policed who I'm friends with.
Do you feel a sense of surplus guilt?
I think I feel a lot of complex things. I wasn't just a victim of this church. Like, I was doing this to people. Like, I was recruiting people. I stood by and watched homophobia happen, and I didn't challenge it. I didn't speak up. Like, I wasn't, I just sat there thinking this feels wrong, but I was too afraid to say anything.
Are you still a Christian after this?
I'm not a Christian now. I'm not a Christian now. Sometimes I find myself just getting angry when someone tells me they're a Christian because I just feel so angry about, like, the manipulation.
Why do you think it's important to tell this story now?
I feel like this is the start of hopefully a turning point where now things are coming out in the open. It will be less easy for churches like this to prey on people because people will be more aware.